Hi, hello. I'm Chewy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Chewy.
Thank you for the intro, Laura. It's very nice to meet you tonight as well. So let me see here. I have been in the rooms of the program for the past 6 years, since 2018, I believe. And of course, I came in kicking and screaming, like most of us do. I don't know what kind of conception of AA I thought I had, but I thought it was this horrible place where people like got sentenced to go and nobody really wanted to be there. And I didn't really understand why people would go back because I assumed that nobody wanted to be here. And I just, made up everything bad that I could think of for what this program does for people. And it was one of my coworkers who could tell that I was struggling with my alcoholism at work. Things were getting pretty out of hand. And so she invited me to my first meeting, which was at a Pass It On meeting hall in Normandy Park. And, I went to this meeting, as fate would have it, it was a birthday meeting. I don't remember how much time I'd had sober. It was probably like half an hour, to be honest. But the meeting was really full. We passed a big book around the room, and everybody was writing their phone number in it. So the book comes to me, I write my phone number in it and pass it around. And at the end of the meeting, they had announced that they, on their birthday night, what they do is they give a copy of the big book, which everybody had signed, to the person who has the least amount of sobriety. And that happened to be me. So my first hard copy of the big book that I ever got, I have my phone number in just in case I need it to call, which I think is a fun story to share. So I came from a pretty broken family of addicts. We weren't a really close family. We were kind of all just on our own, doing our own thing. I had an older brother growing up who I didn't get along with, and I just felt very isolated for the longest time. But with my parents, I could see how alcohol affected them, and I didn't like it. So I'd sworn it off for the longest time. And, I grew up without drinking. I don't think I had my first drink until I was 21. I think I drank on my birthday just because that's what people do. And I was like, well, I might as well do that. But I didn't start drinking then. I had gone a few years, I think, until I was 25 before I started really drinking heavily. I had a job that was really emotionally taxing. And I just couldn't handle it. And I kind of decompressed by drinking, and things just got out of hand to the point where my depression mixed with my alcoholism just got too much for me. And I couldn't even figure out how to get to work anymore. And that kind of started my journey of coming into the rooms and learning what alcoholism is actually all about. And I, was very hesitant to get a sponsor when I first came in. I didn't want to do any work. The only thing that I was really comfortable with was doing service work, which is probably how I ended up here in front of you all tonight. I would always help set up meetings, make coffee, do whatever I can. Like I said, that first meeting that I went to was at a meeting hall where they had, I think, 6 meetings a day, every day of the week. So I kind of just knew to just go there to kind of feel better about myself. I heard a lot of people that I connected with in those rooms, and a lot of the stuff that they talked about made a lot of sense, and I really identified with the feelings and emotions that people had. So I kept coming back, but I still couldn't stop drinking. I think I drank for the first year, probably year and a half, while I was coming to the rooms. Been to several meetings under the influence. But regardless of how I felt in between meetings, I always felt really good at meetings, and I didn't like the way that I felt when I was leaving meetings. So that got kind of tricky for me because meetings had become a very safe space for me. And I had gone through several sponsors trying to work the steps, but I wasn't really done drinking yet at the time. So, of course, it didn't work. And I was kind of just getting progressively worse over the years. I had been able to, put together a couple months here and there. Ended up going to treatment for my first time in, I think, 2019, where I went to a 30-day program, which I stayed for 45 days. And after that, I think I had about 4 or 5 months before I ended up drinking again. And that was the longest that I was able to put together until a couple years later in 2021, where I got my first DUI. It was February 11th, 2021 that I got my first DUI. And on March 4th of that year, I got my third DUI. So I happened to get 3 DUIs within 3 weeks. And didn't really know what else to do. So at that point, what I had done was I knew that I was probably facing jail or prison time or something really serious. So I was like, okay, well, how am I going to keep the judge like happy? What do I have to do? And I was like, okay, I can go into sober living. I can try to stay sober. And for it took 9 months to process those DUIs. It was on the tail end of COVID. It was a lot of just my lawyer trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to handle things. I ended up getting 2 deferred prosecutions, which is kind of unheard of for 2 of them. And then the last DUI, I ended up getting sentenced to 90 days in jail. And so I went and did my time. I ended up doing, I think, 70 days in Kittitas County. That was where I got my first DUI. I was trying to run away from all my problems. So I got really drunk one day, got in the car, and just drove east. Didn't really work out very well for me. But after I had, done my time, I kind of thought that the worst part of my addiction was over. I had paid the consequences that I had earned, and I didn't feel like I needed the program as much. I was still, legally required to go to meetings every 2 meetings a week. I had 3 probation officers, and I was doing all the things I was supposed to stay out of trouble. But I wasn't dealing with any of like the internal problems that I had going on, none of the depression, the feelings of loneliness, the isolation. And after I think about a year and a half of living in the sober house or the Oxford house, I had decided that I was ready to move out, and I thought that other people needed that house more than I did because I had earned, I think, 16 months sober, and I just felt like it was time for me to move out on my own. So I moved into an apartment with some friends and lived with them for about a year. And then things went kind of south with those roommates. They were normies, but they didn't like drink all the time. We did have alcohol in the house. And things just went sideways with them. So I moved into my own apartment this past July. And because I hadn't really stayed focused in the program, I wasn't checking in with my mental health. I hadn't gone through the steps. I wasn't working with a sponsor. Wasn't even doing service work anymore. I was working like 4 jobs at the time, I think, and just not checking in with myself. And it ultimately led to me relapsing pretty hard this past October. It was a really rough 3 weeks where I lost almost all of my material possessions. I had a job that I thought I was holding on to. I was scared I was going to lose my apartment. Again, I didn't know what else to do, and I ended up in the hospital after drinking too much one night. And when I was in the hospital, they mentioned that they were going to send me to treatment, and I was like, okay, going to treatment again. And they mentioned this place called Lakeside Milam. And I had a lot of friends in the program and in my Oxford house that had been to Milam, and they had really strong recovery. So that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, okay, I can go to this Milam place. I've seen it do wonderful things for people, so maybe it can help me out. And while I was there, I felt different this time being in treatment. I felt like there was a little bit of an emotional change within myself. And I thought that I had completely surrendered and I was ready to do the work and put in the time. And I ended up learning some things about myself while I was in treatment that I would later find out were some of my worst character defects. And while I thought I was ready to kind of deal with these problems, it turns out I wasn't. And I kind of got freaked out because I was so just blind and oblivious to the fact that I was very manipulative and was very controlling. And I just wasn't ready to handle that. So after I got out of treatment, I think 2 days later, I started drinking again. And I felt pretty hopeless at this time because I just didn't know what to do. I had technically violated my probation by drinking because I wasn't supposed to drink. So I totally snitched on myself to my probation officer. Not quite sure how that's going to end up. I have a court date this Wednesday that will determine what happens. And I really just don't know what the consequences are for just drinking while you're on probation 2 years into a 5-year program. It's a little scary to think about, but I'm trying to just focus on my recovery. And while I was in Lakeside Milam, I had heard someone share some things that I really resonated with. And I hadn't ever felt like I had connected with anybody who spoke in the rooms the way that I connected with this gentleman. And he's now my sponsor, which I've been very fortunate to be able to work with the past 3 months. And I was kind of terrified after I'd relapsed that I thought that he was going to abandon me and not want to work with me anymore because I couldn't really be trusted at the time. But he did stick with me, and we started working together. We are currently reading the doctor's opinion in the big book, so we just started reading together. There's homework that I do now. He has me doing service positions, and he's kind of like taught me to just throw myself into the program and be of service wherever I can. So, I go to about 4 or 5 meetings a week now. It's kind of just my default go-to when I have some free time after work or I don't know what I should be doing. I kind of just get to a meeting, whatever meeting's closest. And most of the times I try to listen. So the time that I had earned before my relapse, I had 2 years and 7 months. And today I have 39 days. And I try not to think too much about the quantity versus the quality of my recovery. The past 39 days, I feel like I've learned a lot more than I had because I've actually been applying myself, and I've been really pushing my willingness and my open-mindedness to, try to get a new routine, to do things differently, because I know ultimately this disease will kill me. So that being said, I'm very grateful to be here tonight. Just finished doing some service work, answering the phones. We had a very overwhelming 2 phone calls today, but I feel like we had 2 successful phone calls, so that's a very good thing. And tonight I'm going to support some fellow home group members by going to a meeting that they are speaking at tonight. So after this meeting, I will be able to listen to other people share their experience, strength, and hope. So that's all I have for you tonight. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. Thanks.